Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to ask my panelists if they can also turn their video on and join me in the camera zone. Thank you so much again, like I said, for joining us. Really appreciate you attending this call today. My name is Ailey. I work for Scottish Student Sport as the Tayside, Fife and Grampian Regional Development Coordinator. And today, the wonderful panel here with me are going to be discussing transitioning to university and college when you are disabled. Today we have with us Alison Shaw from Scottish Disability Sport, who are soon going to be joined by Lynn Glenn, who is the Pathways Manager also from Scottish Disability Sport. We have Laura Pilkington, second year student and athlete at RGU, who is part of Scottish Student Sports Equality Steering Group and SDS's Young People Sport Panel. We have Rebecca from Leeds, Scotland joining us as well. And also Brenna, who is a current student at QMU, Queen Margaret University, who also sits on Scottish Disability Sports Young Start programme. Great to have you all with us. I'm going to leave the room and I will let our panel discuss the topic we have today, and we'll join you very shortly. Enjoy.
Right, to start off, we're going to do a wee icebreaker. So if everyone could message in the chat and answer some questions. First of all, we'd like to know who you are. So what's your name? And where are you from? And if you are a student, it's what you're hoping to study and where you're hoping to study. So let's all get to know you a little bit. So we've got one person, Cameron Brodie's from Scottish Institute of Sport. Bob. We won't bite. And then we've got Cheryl Lappin from Scottish Disability Sport RDM Central, and just here to see the webinar. And then Ross Brand, Learner Engagement Officer from New College, Lancashire. I'm going to pronounce things wrong, I apologise. I'm not good at this kind of thing. And then we've got Alistair, who's from East Lothian and is progressing from Edinburgh College to university after the summer. That's fab. And Julie Hughes from the University of Glasgow, and she is an active lifestyles manager. That's fab. So I don't feel like I'm talking to a room full of strangers anymore, so that's okay. So if that's everyone who's willing to talk, we'll maybe head on to the next slide, if that's okay. Okay, so some background to the event. Well, I would have been joined by my colleague Cameron from the Young Start programme, but unfortunately he's not feeling well today. But he was also one of the brains behind this, so that's why it's written about both of us. So, but basically, I am part of the Scottish Disability Sport Young Start programme, and through this, we decided to create an event surrounding moving on to higher education as someone with a disability. Both Cameron and I are students with disabilities ourselves, and we felt that we would have really benefited from having access to an event like this. And we both wanted students to be a bit more prepared than we were and have some guidance to overcome any challenges or issues that may crop up in this transitioning process. So we'll go on to the next slide and I'll pass it over to Rebecca.
Thanks very much for that, Brenna, and for coming up with this fantastic webinar. Really good idea, and as you say, it's such an important thing that a lot of students miss out on, so fantastic that you've brought us all together today. So yeah, my name's Rebecca and I work for a small charity called Lead Scotland. We've been around for over 40 years now, but not a lot of people have heard of us. So we're always trying to do events like this to get the word out as well and make sure that students do know about us. So we support disabled people to learn, both in their own homes and in the community. And that's the kind of main part of our job. But aside from that, my role is to support students. And we do that via the National Disabled Students Helpline that we have. So we have Scotland's only National Disabled Students Helpline. On top of the helpline, we also produce different fact sheets and guides that are all about disability and post-school learning. Next slide, please. So the people that we support is really anyone over the age of 16 who is disabled or has a health condition or an impairment and really wants some extra support and advice about how they're going to cope and what help is available when they move on into college or university or whatever it might be they're doing post-school and when it comes to education. Next slide, please. So what's it going to be like when you move on? Obviously, the transition from school to college or university is really scary. You might be moving somewhere completely new. I decided to go all the way down to England. I was like, let me get away from my family and go to Scotland, away from Scotland, just wanted to be different. And I remember, you know, I was with a lot of people who are a lot older than me, and that was quite a shock. You know, I was expecting to be with a lot of younger people from really different backgrounds. And you suddenly are treated like, you know, you're expected to be a responsible adult. So there's a real transition time for you, as well as everything that you might have to cope with when you're disabled. So there's a lot to take in. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about some of the support that might be available for you specifically, and well, for all students, but also for disabled students as well, and touch a little bit on some of the rights that you might have as a disabled student, and just kind of some useful things to know about and really where to get kind of further advice and help, and some links for you to kind of take away and to know about. You know, you don't need to kind of remember all of this. There's some good links for you to take away, and you can always get in touch with us on the helpline later on. So if you're going to college or uni, they all have what's known as student support services. That's the kind of umbrella term for it. So they're kind of broken down into lots of different categories. So we go to the next slide. So there'll be well-being or some type of well-being or welfare support. So, you know, if you might be feeling overwhelmed or anxious about being away from home, obviously being in new surroundings, you might get a personal tutor. Some students might get being kind of matched with a peer mentor. So it could be an older student perhaps to introduce you to college or student life. Every college and university will have their own students association. So while they'll provide kind of the social side of things, they'll also have information and advice and perhaps advocacy, which is support to help you speak up for yourself as well, and different types of welfare support. So that's the kind of well-being aspect of it. And most colleges and universities now all provide a free counselling service as well. So there's a really big emphasis on mental well-being and mental health support. So that's all available at your college and university, and sometimes people don't always know it's there. So it's just about being proactive and searching that out. So making sure you become familiar with what's available on campus when you start. Next slide. Learner support. So learner support is available to everybody, not just to disabled students. So again, you're making that move from school to college or uni. So you're gonna you're up in your game in terms of what's expected of you academically. So there might be support on how to write an academic essay, how to do a presentation well. There might be support in using specific IT equipment and different software. And then there might be additional disability related learner support. So that might be adaptive adapted software specifically to kind of support you with an impairment that you might have. So within colleges and universities, they will all have a specific department. In university, it's generally known as the Disability Service or the Disability Office. Colleges might have a slightly different name. So it's normally the Additional Learning Support Team or the Supported Learning Team or something around that, but each college has a slightly different name. So sorry, can we just go back one slide? Yeah, so one thing to say though is if you can, if you've already got a place and you've been accepted, try and make an appointment with that specific department in advance of starting your course. And we'll come back to that later, but it is important to try and make contact with that department as soon as you can to let them know that you're coming and really what your needs are if relevant. Not everybody who's disabled needs to have, you know, specific support and specific adjustments, but if you do, then it's important to try and get that as soon as possible. There's also financial support available. So again, all colleges and unis will have a student finance team, and there are specific funding pots available for disabled students. So if you're studying at HNC level or above, there is a specific fund for you called the Disabled Students Allowance. I'm not going to go into lots of detail about that just now because we've got a fact sheet about it on our website and I've linked to that at the end, so you can take your time over that and read about it. But basically the money is non-refundable. You don't need to pay it back. It's not a loan. It's not based on your income, so it's non-means tested, and it's money to pay for things like equipment or perhaps a BSL sign language interpreter or perhaps a mental health mentor. There's lots of different things that money could pay for. Okay, next slide. So just want to touch a little bit on something called the Equality Act, because it's a good thing to know about. The Equality Act is the piece of, is the law, basically the piece of legislation that protects you as a disabled person in the UK. So we have the Equality Act, and there are these things known as protected characteristics. And there are 9 protected characteristics, and one of those is disability. So that means that places like employers, colleges, universities, businesses can't discriminate you or treat you less favourably for anything related to or to do with having one of these protected characteristics. What it also means is that colleges and universities have a duty to make what's called a reasonable adjustment for you. So we're going to talk about what a reasonable adjustment might look like. So next slide. So as I was saying before, a lot of students can get caught up with, well, should I disclose? Am I disabled? I'm not really sure whether I meet the definition. I'd rather not disclose because I don't really identify with that word disabled. I kind of have a health condition. I'm not sure if that's a disability, or do they need to know that, you know, it's a different level of disability? These are types of questions that we get all the time, and people can get quite caught up in them and not sure whether they should disclose. And people are also can be quite, I suppose, guarded with that information, and rightly so, because it's your own personal information, and people can feel, well, I don't want people to know because I want to be graded on my own merits. And there's this kind of, I guess, sometimes a misconception that if you disclose as disabled, then somehow, you know, it's gonna, you're gonna get special treatment of some description. But it's really about giving you equity. You know, it's about being able to tell people as soon as possible. So make sure that you disclose as early as possible. So there's different ways to do that. You can disclose on the UCAS form, or you can disclose on your college application form, or you can tell the student support service or the disability service, the learning support team, or you can even tell one of your tutors. If you don't disclose on the UCAS form, that's okay. You know, you could do it later. If you don't disclose on the college application form, if you've already got a place and you're thinking, oh, I've not actually told anyone yet, that's okay. You know, you can still do that. You know, it's not like there's just one opportunity to disclose. The main point is do it as soon as possible. Sometimes what we find is that people don't disclose till much later. What happens is they run into problems. They don't get the support in place, and they realise that actually they needed that adjustment. They needed to have, you know, different formats, or needed to have extra time, or they needed to have things changed a little bit for them to make things equal, not special treatment, but equal. But they didn't disclose, and then they've ended up getting poorer marks and not doing as well as they probably could have done, that they have the potential to, because they were worried about, you know, being singled out. So it's really important to remember that, and how important it is to try and maybe put that to one side and think about the potential, that you're unlocking your potential in doing this. And it's okay if you don't identify with those words, disability or disabled, because a lot of people don't. Those are literally just the words that are taken from the legislation, and we have to just go by the legislation, but it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily identify with those words. So I've written a wee blog about it to try and put that into words, to kind of take away, called Tick the Box blog, which is hyperlinked there. So you'll get these slides and you can have a look at that again as well. Next slide, please. So what is a reasonable adjustment? This is just a list of types of things. So some of this might be paid for via the disabled students allowance that I talked about earlier, or it could be that your college has their own internal funds that will pay for it. So it could be a laptop that has maybe special software that you can dictate to, that might be able to type things out for you. It could be a personal helper in class that can support you and maybe take notes. A reasonable adjustment might not be financial, so it might be the fact that they'll maybe, the college or the uni will change the normal rules that apply to everyone else, but they'll be applied differently for you to take into account the difficulties that you might experience as a disabled person. For example, you might face additional absences, maybe if you have a fluctuating health condition that you just can't control, well, you can't just be penalised for that, you know, like anybody else would be, because that would be discrimination. You might get extensions to coursework potentially if you discuss that in advance. It might be about, you know, maybe if you suffer from anxiety, or perhaps if you're autistic, you might, you know, appreciate having some quiet space for you to work, or just to have some time out. So these are just a number of things that might be suitable. There's a whole range of different options that might be useful. Okay, next slide. So how does it work? So like we've said before, make sure you disclose as early as possible through the different formats that we've discussed earlier. What will happen is the college or the university will assess your educational support needs. So they won't assess or diagnose your condition or your impairment. They'll discuss with you what your educational needs are, okay? So they'll carry out a needs assessment and a plan will be made, okay? That plan will be made in conjunction with you, and it should be written down or typed up and agreed. So what equipment's going to be provided, what adjustments are we going to be made, are we going to put support workers in place? And with your agreement, that plan should be communicated to whoever you give permission for it to be communicated for. So ideally to your tutors. It's on a need to know basis though. So you decide who gets to need to know that information, but the more people that know about it means the more people that are able to support you. Okay, next slide. And that's it. These are just the final bits, the useful links. So I've linked to our helpline page, which just has our phone number and our opening hours on it. It's a free phone helpline. A link to all the guides that we've written. So a guide to getting support at college, getting support at university, to the disabled students allowance, and lots of other information. That's our helpline number there. And also wanted to just give a shout out to Disabled Students UK. They're a new grassroots student-led organisation that have cropped up in the last year, which is great because there's not been a lot of disabled student-led stuff. They do a lot of campaigning to kind of influence change for disabled students, but they also provide a lot of peer-to-peer support. So you might be having an issue and kind of put a question on there, and there'll be a lot of people who jump in and say, oh, this has been my experience, or this has been helpful. So it's great to kind of have that peer-to-peer support. And that's me. Thank you very much. So I am now going to pass over to Laura.
Hi everyone. So I'm just going to talk a bit about my journey within university. As you can see from the timeline there, it's not a straight line I've had, and my experience has been quite up and down. So I'm just going to go over a few things that I've taken from that, and it's kind of helped me along the way. So I left school after 5th year and went to the University of Stirling to study computing science. So when I left school, I was quite nervous to go to university. I wasn't sure how I was going to manage to cope. I wasn't sure how it would be, but I knew I wanted to go. So like I took the jump after fifth year and went up to Stirling. When I went there, I did what Rebecca said, and I had like a meeting with the Disability Student Services, and I found that really helpful. It can be something that you're like, oh, I've got to do this, but it's worth it in the end. And I think just having that discussion with the person and just kind of being open and honest, because you're the person that knows you best and you know what you need help with. So I think just getting that over right at the start is really important. So one of the other things I had to consider when I was moving away from home was how am I going to live by myself? Like, where am I going to stay? So I chose to stay on campus at Stirling in student accommodation there, just because it was easy because it was accessible to the uni. Uh, Before I got there, I toured the different buildings, so I got to see the different adaptations that you already had. So at Stirling, they had specific accommodation for people with disability, but they could also add additional adaptations and towards that because everyone's different with disability and different things have to be adjusted. So I found that really useful to be able to have that opportunity to view the accommodation. And obviously with COVID, it might be a bit harder right now, but even asking what do you have like already and just kind of seeing what you need in place. So there's just a few other things that I kind of had to think about. One of course important things is how you're going to get your food, how you're going to get that food shopping. And that was something I found quite hard because I wasn't sure how I was going to manage with my wheelchair, how I was going to get the food. And I think for me, the easiest way I did that was sort of delivery. And you want to kind of go out there and do it yourself, but for me, it was easier to get it delivered to the flat. So I think it's just something you've got to think about and just take into your own circumstances and see how's this going to be easiest for me. And you're not going to kind of, what I learned is you're not going to know what you need straight away and you kind of have to review it and come back. And just because you said that at the start, this is what I need, doesn't mean you can't change it because I found issues with like getting access into certain rooms and I was just like, oh, it'll be fine. But it was something that just caused a lot of hassle and I had to go back to the student services and kind of talk about it. But in the long run, it made things easier, even though at the time it's not something I wanted to have to deal with, just another thing. But it was something that kind of overall was like worth it in the end. So yeah, that was kind of how I sort of approached it when I moved from home. I think for me, I swam competitively. I still swim competitively, and being part of that sort of sporting environment at Stirling was how I made my sort of friends. Like kind of knowing people through sport was kind of the sort of part of me that helped that transition. Because I was still part of that sport. I still knew a lot of people through sport, and it just kind of gave you that group, that place to socialise. I also joined a few different clubs, so I think I joined the badminton club as well, just to kind of give that sort of social circle. I think it's quite important just to kind of try new things when you go to university. Like everyone's kind of in that new position where they don't know anyone and they want to meet people. So it's really important just to try new things and meet new people through different avenues. With sport was kind of the avenue that I went down to kind of meet new people. So in 2017, it was the start of 2017 I left Stirling University because I was doing computing science and I didn't really like computing science. I did it because at the time when I left school, it's what I wanted to do. But as I got further down, I knew wasn't enjoying it. I was also really struggling with mental health, and I just knew I had to sort of take the lead to kind of look after myself a bit more and kind of put the degree on the backbone for a bit. So when I did that, I went out to Mallorca for a year. I think it was like 6 months in total, but I came back in between during the winter. So I kind of took a bit of a gap and was just kind of trying to decide what I wanted to do. So when I got home from that, that's when I applied to go back to university, as I knew I still wanted to get a degree, but I wanted to do it in sports. Originally, I probably should have gone for sports in the first place, but with having a disability, I was kind of like, oh, might not be able to do it. And like other people were like, oh yeah, it might just be easier if you just do computing, like it's like simple, you're just at a desk sort of thing. But I kind of just went with what everyone told me to do and just did computing, whereas I should have like just gone for doing sports, because like the access that I've had and the support I've had through the university has been great. Like they adapt the course for me, and it's not because you can't do a little part of the course that you can't do the degree. That's not true. Like there's so many different ways you can do things, and I think it just gives you that sort of perspective. I've felt a lot. I've kind of got a different perspective in sport that not everyone in my class has, and just having that confidence to have that discussion in the group is like really key towards that. So I went to Robert Gordon in 2018 to 2019. And I think I took some of the things I learned from Sterling to kind of help me go through that process. So when I went to RGU, I kind of stayed in a bit of a smaller flat. At Sterling, I stayed in a flat with 10 of us. And for me, that was quite overwhelming and it just wasn't great. So I think I stayed in a flat at RGU with three. This wasn't like a sort of university-based accommodation. This was like private accommodation, so it was a bit harder to get adaptations in. So it's kind of like when you're kind of deciding where you want to stay, looking at those different options and kind of if they've not got adaptations, communicating what they can do for you, as it took a bit longer to sort of get that in place. So you just kind of want that to get off the phone straight away and kind of push for those things. And if things aren't working, kind of like what I said earlier, like try and get them to change. Like if you don't ask, you'll never know. So it's good to put that out there. So yeah, I did sports science at RGU. As you can see, my journey is not straightforward from there. I took a leave of absence in 2018. This was because of my mental health again. I still wasn't in a great place, and I knew that I kind of had to take a break from studying. And I was kind of frustrated because I knew that I enjoyed what I was doing, but I just wasn't in the right place to do it. So I took that leave of absence in 2018 to 2019. During that time was when the pandemic hit, and I had that sort of time to kind of take a bit of a step back from things and just kind of think about what I wanted to do. And with it being virtual as well, I kind of was like, okay, we'll go back, we can see how it goes. Like I don't need to fully commit myself because I'm not actually moving anywhere, and I think that helped me kind of make that decision. But I'm really happy with like my studies now, and I think I've taken everything over the last maybe 6 years now, the breaks I've had to take. But looking back, it doesn't matter. Like, and now I've kind of accepted that your journey doesn't have to be straightforward. It can be sort of up and down, and that's fine. Like everyone has just a different way to get to places. So yeah, that's kind of just an overview of how I found university, and just overall I found like swimming a really helpful factor to keep active within that, and just to kind of give me a place to sort of be myself and interact with like my friends and stuff. And I think it's really useful if you want to keep active throughout university to join a club and just make some friends and have a good time. So yeah, I'll pass you over to Lynn Glenn, who's just going to talk a bit about more about Scottish disability sport and the great opportunities.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you. Thanks for the invite to be here today. Look forward to answering any questions. So it's a great photo, Laura. Are you aware that that exists?
No, I saw it just before and I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
There we go. We'll send it to you. That's one of the ways we can support. We can take photographs of you and send it on. So yeah, so just to kind of give an overview of some of the ways that we can support you as a student. Can we move on to the next slide, please? And a wee bit about just who we are and what we do. And I won't spend a lot of time on this because I know that time's going on. But it's just to let you know, we are the governing body for disability sport in Scotland. And we do have 13 member branches, and I'll show you where they are at the moment, because they could well be part of your student sport journey as well, in terms of providing opportunities to participate and or volunteer or get involved in free education programmes. We do lead inclusive sport in Scotland for participants and athletes with physical, sensory and learning disabilities. And we're also the governing body of the sport of boccia. So if you've heard about that, great. If you haven't, get in touch and we can let you know about the sport of boccia as well. Always an opportunity to do a selling point, and Alison is our master seller in terms of boccia. She believes everybody should do boccia. And then also in terms of working with 37 governing bodies, and we include within that Scottish Student Sport, who we have a partnership agreement with, and I'll say a little bit more about that later on as well. And just 32 local authorities, so no matter which local authority area you live in Scotland, we're working in partnership with them. So whether you're moving away for university or you're staying in your own area, we can still help connect you into local activities. And we're also the lead voice, so we can support with more than sport as well in terms of disability sport and inclusion in Scotland. So we work with many partners to support that. Can I have the next slide, please? So in here, it's got you at the centre, and everything that we do in SDS is participant centred. And we have an activity inclusion model, and it puts participants at the centre. So in here, our student support, it's about you and what you need, and bringing the support that you need. So for some people, and I'll probably use Laura within this in terms of an example, is that, you know, for Laura at the centre there, most of these hexagons and outside might be applicable for, but for you, that might change. So it's very fluid because it is about what you need. So what we have done in the past, and I'm not going back to refer about Laura in particular, but what we have done is find out that our athletes are moving on to university. So we have been the liaison for them in terms of that transition and supporting that transition between kind of school sport into university sport, or even just trying to find conversations that solve any issues that come up around enabling you to continue that smooth transition in sport and physical activity. So we may well help you find the right coach and the right athlete, the right club. But also what we do is, you know, you've seen in that first slide, we work with 37 governing bodies. So whichever governing body you are involved with, we can support the conversations with them as well. And I'm pretty sure, Laura, in terms of swimming, that's why you went to Stirling University. So we know where the pockets of activity are. So we know Stirling is swimming. And am I right in thinking that Edinburgh rowing is popular there, and also in my mind's went blank. Alison and Cheryl, I know you're both in the call here, help me out here in terms of wheelchair basketball and what's becoming more popular there. I know down south it's Worcester, but up here there is one that's growing more in popularity with wheelchair basketballers, isn't there?
I think that's Stirling, yeah.
Is it Stirling again? Yeah. Okay, so Stirling's het, I thought it was somewhere else. So we can support that transition. We can track. So Laura mentioned her journey in terms of moving from Stirling to RGU, and that was a conversation between two RDMs that are in the call at the moment, and with Alison and Cheryl, to say, do you know that Laura's and Paul Wilson, who's the governing body representative there supporting Laura, that's part of that conversation in terms of tracking. And it's often a conversation that can be difficult in other sports, but in disability sport, we have full coverage across Scotland, and we can support that. So again, we can track, we can share with our colleagues in the team, and we can also, there we go. Thanks, Cheryl. Stirling Uni have a few national wheelchair basketball players and support their development. That's brilliant. Thanks for that, Pete. So in terms of that tracking and sharing, so sounds a bit like the COVID process, but it's not. It's just about tracking you as an individual and supporting your transition from institution to institution. And our RDMs do that really well. We can access funding with you, for your needs, dependent on the funding streams that are available out there. Some of them only do up to 25s, and that's perfect for you as a student. Or there may be other ones that do 25 and over, but we can certainly sit with you if it's specialist equipment you need to enable you to begin your journey or continue your journey in sport. Then we can access the funding in terms of being able to meet your needs and allowing you to progress. Volunteering is an important one, and that's where we've got a partnership with Scottish Student Sport, and I know Ailey's been a massive support for us, and Ian Lowe, who is Ailey's line manager, is also in the call as well. And we've got nationally, we've got a partnership with Scottish Student Sport, and it's looking at 3 areas. So importantly, the three that are around about students is if you're doing PE, if you're doing sports studies, or any other sports related course, then we will be in that institution delivering training. So we'll upskill you or your peers, more importantly, to enable the inclusion of people with disabilities within physical activity and sport across Scotland, regardless of the course that they're doing. But also for you, we can offer you volunteering opportunities. We can offer education and training in generic disability sport inclusion courses, but also link into sport specific courses as well. So if you are coming to the end of your career as an athlete, or maybe you want to do it in parallel, you want to be an athlete and a coach or a volunteer, we can support you to do that. And through our 13 branches nationally, they play a massive role in enabling us to roll out our education and training programmes. So we can get you involved. So the student sport partnership is around education within the curriculum, but also to provide an inclusive campus and support the clubs to offer you an inclusive opportunity. So Laura, I'm interested in the badminton club that you went to. What was your experience?
I found it quite good, but
Yeah.
I wasn't really, like, I was more there for social and just kind of having fun than like doing it properly, to be honest.
And that's okay, that's absolutely allowed as well. But even just in terms of that inclusion for the social, that's really important as well.
Yeah.
So you know, I know Cheryl's done a bit of work with the clubs in Central and in Stirling University around providing inclusion training. So it could be well that kind of preceded your experience, which would then support you to be included. So, and then so there's volunteering, there's the inclusive campus for you to participate in sport, and then there's the training within the curriculum. And there's probably spin-offs from that as well. And Laura's here, so perfect example of our young person sports panel. Laura's on that. A Young Start programme where we support young people to transition from athletes into leadership coaching roles and even employability opportunities. So all of this roundabout is and recognise and celebrate success. So when, I think a few months ago, the swimming squads, Paul Wilson, Scottish Swimming, and the para squad went to take part in the World Series, we were able to collect that information, send it to Scottish Student Sport, and then they were able to take it back to the institutions and recognise and celebrate the success of those swimmers, which is really important in terms of raising the profile within the tertiary institutions across Scotland. And yeah, so that might change for you, but the message is it's very much bespoke. Alison and Cheryl are here. I've probably missed things, so please feel free to chip in. But the message is it's about you. We will support you. It will be tailored support round about you. And please get in touch if you don't already know us. And how do you do that? If you can move on the next slide, please, that would be great. And this is our branch map. So this is where our 13 member branches are. There's some gaps in the west of Scotland, but really these branches will provide education and training opportunities, participation opportunities, but also volunteering opportunities where you can go along and support the delivery, or even be an office bearer, or within the local branch and get experience. So if you're doing a sport related subject, you want some volunteering experience, it's a win-win. And you can be an office bearer, coach, volunteer, tea person, whatever it is you want to do. So again, that opportunity will be tailored around about you. So Cheryl's just popped into the chat there. For our national players athletes on the call, there are opportunities, there you go, to support absolutely training and competition. We can make you aware of when they are. We can make sure you've got the right level of training when you're transitioning as well, because you linking in with the sport specific lead. Was that, Cheryl? Give us come in if you think that's what I've covered, or have I missed anything? Okay, we'll move on for that. And scholarships as well, and the gift that keeps giving, so that is just anything round about you that you need, and it varies from, there you go, Ailey's past that one. So just in terms of being, you're the most important person, and you're the one that we want to support so that you can reach your aspirations, and that may be recreational and social, or it may be a pathway as well. We cover both sides of the spectrum. And then if you can just flick on again, please. So in here, this is our regional managers. We do have full coverage of Scotland at the moment, and you can see in there, so if anybody's from Western Isles, it's me, and if you're from Grampian, it's Alison. Central and East and West of Martinshire, it's Cheryl. So yeah, just get in touch, and if you whether you're transitioning to college, university, or if you're just looking to get involved in sport, then get in touch and we can support you to do that and bring that support to you. Thank you. And I'll hand over to Brenna.
Okay, hello. Well, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about my student experience, which admittedly, since I started in 2020, because of the year and that I've just about going to second year, it's quite limited. So keep that in mind while I'm talking. But yep, so I'm about to start my second year at Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh, and I am studying primary education. So moving to uni was quite a big deal for me, mostly because I picked a uni that was 4 hours away from home. So as someone that has never lived independently, and well, none of my friends were going with me, it was like this really big change for me. And as someone that I could have gone to the closest uni, and my mum's still a bit annoyed with me for not picking that one, but you know, I can't go back now. So basically, well, I want to say I haven't set foot in a lecture hall, and I spent most of the first year at my desk. I still passed though, so it's all good. But I going to uni, when I was leaving, I was really anxious, even though I was only there for 2 months. Throughout school, I was bullied basically because of my disability. So meeting new people, I wasn't very optimistic, and I was really anxious about the prospect of people being mean and things like that. So I was quite nervous leaving. But quite soon I made friends that basically just didn't care. And I began to be a bit more optimistic about meeting new people. And it really helped shift my perspective a little bit. So, but with that being said, I did come across a few challenges. As Laura mentioned, shopping. Basically, I picked the uni because of actually how accessible it was. Because basically the halls is right round the corner from the uni, and I keep walking a little bit and there's a bus stop and there's a train station. So for someone that can't drive and that has mobility issues, that's fab, and it's like a dream come true. But basically what I found for shopping is I was struggling traveling back and forth and carrying all my shopping. So I simply began ordering things online and getting my food delivered. And as well, for cooking, some days I didn't feel up to making my supper. I was either too sore or I was too tired. So when I was up to making supper, I froze it. I made too much and I froze it. So then I heated it up and just cooked some rice or pasta, and that was me sorted. And as well, I had to be ahead of my deadlines. So if I wasn't, I either got too anxious about it or I couldn't, with the fatigue, I couldn't predict how much I could do every day. So by leaving it all last minute, I couldn't predict that I'd be able to do it. And as well, I needed my weekends, because if I didn't recuperate over the weekends, then I wouldn't be able to do anything the week after. So although these challenges cropped up, I found they had quite easy solutions. And what I found really useful was actually making my disability known to the disability service. So I had a meeting with them before I actually went to uni. So I already had support in place. And when these extra challenges cropped up, they were more than willing to have a call with me and talk it through. And they've offered me quite a lot of support. Support I haven't had to use, not all of it, but it's nice knowing that the support's there if I need it, and I'm not alone, and that I'm able to easily access it if and when I need it. But what I found at uni is, because of the year, it was quite isolating. And I found that keeping in contact with my friends and family from home was really quite useful. So if I wasn't feeling too great, I was able to call, say, my mum or my best mate, and I could have a talk to them, even if they're 4 hours away on FaceTime. It was able to brighten my day a little bit and really help. So I'd recommend trying to keep in contact with some of the people from home, because it can come in quite handy. But uni, even though I was only there for a few months, I found the few months I was there, it really helped me become a bit more confident in my abilities. So now, as someone who, when I lived at home, I'm at home now, but when I lived at home, I wasn't able to make my own supper. And now I cook my own supper all the time. So I'm a bit more independent, and I've got uni to thank for that. But yeah, I found sports to be especially useful, whether it was going to the gym or, well, actually the Young Start program from, well, Scottish Disability Sport, and it helped me meet people, whether it was, well, going to the gym myself or meeting people through this Young Start program. So I wasn't just heading to see my flatmates. I was able to expose myself to a few more people. And being active, I found it kept me in a good headspace, and it also stopped me from feeling completely isolated with online learning. And looking back, I recognise that I was expecting the worst going to uni, and I have been pleasantly surprised. And despite COVID, I have actually had a good experience so far, and I've been really enjoying my course. And I'm hoping to actually join some clubs in second year. So fingers crossed that goes to plan. And despite not having had the stereotypical university experience yet, nor as much to share as Laura did, I hope that you guys were able to take away something from what it is I've shared. So, yeah. I think, can we go on to the next slide, please? Sorry, I'm having like an issue with my screen, so I can't actually see the screen, but it says my camera's on. So I hope you guys can actually hear me. So that's fine. Oh, it's come on now. That's fine. I can see. I'm not looking at a black screen, so that's fine. So yeah, I've got a few tips, even though, well, as I've said, I'm still new to uni myself, and I'm still trying to get to grips with everything. And I'm moving back down in September, so fingers crossed I have a bit more of a normal experience. But for my tips, I would recommend asking for help in whatever it is you may come across that you're finding difficult. And there's many different types of support out there, whether it's from the disability service or the mental health service, in the learning service. There's heaps out there, and there's no reason for you to suffer in silence. As my mum says to me, you don't get a medal. You don't. There's no shame in asking for help. And another thing, this is something I actually need to take a bit, I need to take my own advice. So you need to take some time out for you and make sure that you're fine. And also, because at the end of the day, if you're burnt out, then you're not going to manage to do anything. And you need to be able to look after yourself, even if things are busy and your course is hectic. It's really important to make sure you're looking after yourself. And as well, I wouldn't put too much pressure on the ideal uni experience, especially in COVID times. I say this as I definitely haven't had half of the normal uni experience, but anyway, it looks different for everyone. And it can take some time to settle down and find your people. And there's a lot of other people in the same boat, so you don't need to worry about that. So, and the last one's have some fun. So yeah. Next slide, please. Or I think, yeah. I think, is it Laura next? For the,
Yes, so
yeah.
yes, if you want to fire any questions into the Q&A, I think we've got a couple in already. So we've got one from Cheryl here. So for Brenna, do you want to answer this? And then I'll add some things. But looking back from when you started uni, is there anything you would do differently or advise new students to do regarding getting involved in sports/sessions?
Well, I was too scared to get involved because the sports offered at my uni were all contact sports, and I didn't think I would be able to do any of those. So I kind of just opted out of it. But they've introduced a new cycling club, so I'm going to join that. But I wouldn't be reluctant to join them because I'm sure they'll make adaptations and they're not just going to leave you struggling. So I wouldn't be scared to join them. So, yeah.
I'd probably just add to that, just to kind of try things. I think, obviously, you know, the Freshers Week, they have a sort of come and try week as well for different sports. So I did quite a few of them. I think I tried rowing as well. Like some of them, I don't think I ever went back to, but I just tried it just to see what it was like and just to kind of meet people and have a bit of fun at the same time. And I think kind of talking to the people in the sports club as well is really important because you need to kind of disclose about your disability and just so they're ready to make that adaptations for you and you're both kind of feel comfortable getting ready to start. But yeah, student like sport experience is just amazing and not just for the sports but for meeting people, just getting the competitions, the atmosphere. Like if you can get involved in student sport, like 100% would recommend that. So we've got another question here from Alistair. Firstly, this is for me, as someone who took a leave of absence and then returned to education, did you find any additional struggles with fitting back in and how did you overcome this? Yeah, that was something I was quite worried about. Obviously, I met my first year at RGU in person. I'd kind of gotten to know them. I did struggle at RGU in my first year to sort of make friends in my class, which kind of through sport was how I made most of my friends. But yeah, it was kind of daunting because I didn't know anyone and because they all knew each other. But it was kind of online as well, so it kind of, I guess, broke down that bit of barrier because like there's a few other people and like university, not everybody starts in first year. I wasn't the only new second year in, so I think it was just kind of having to kind of put myself out there, even if I didn't want to, just kind of have to voice myself and kind of be open about things and kind of talk to people. But I think it would have been a completely different experience if I had met everyone in person. So like I've still not met the people in my class, which feels a bit crazy. Some of them I've not even seen their faces because people don't want to put their cameras on. So it's like just trying to contact people, and I've met a couple of them outside of uni now since restrictions are eased. So it's just kind of getting in touch and kind of putting. I kind of had to put myself out there, even though I was kind of scared at the time, but just kind of send a message to someone and just kind of ask how they're doing and just kind of get in touch from there. And then Alistair's got a second question. I'm a mature student and returned to college in 2019 after several years of absence and find it really difficult to socialise with my peers due to my bipolar and ADHD, and after having a mental breakdown, so I really struggle to trust people now. Does anyone have any advice for how to break down this wall that I have prevented from properly fulfilling my dream, helping me to socialise more? Yeah, I can add a wee bit into that and then I'll just open it up to anyone that wants to add in. From me, like I said within my journey, like I struggled with my mental health a lot and that kind of put me a step back. Like I found it quite easy to sort of isolate myself, and it was kind of something that was the easier option. But I think using the sort of counselling services and the support services through university kind of helped me a lot. And I think it's just getting in touch with the university sort of counselling services and even they sort of gave me sort of different links to like a bit much for me, so they had that sort of consideration. anyone else want to add anything?
Sorry, I was just going to come in there. You were freezing a lot there, Laura. I don't know if that was just on my screen or if other people were finding that as well. I don't know if other people were finding that that was freezing, or is it just me? But I was going to say that it's dependent on different colleges and universities and what they have available. But some institutions might have a kind of transition program specifically to support students in that kind of that process of joining. And I know, for example, Glasgow Caledonian have one specifically for students who identify as having mental health challenges. So it's a fairly new programme, but they've had kind of some success in that and seeing how it's kind of helped students, kind of bring students together and help to kind of develop that social aspect to that have real fears of kind of moving away from home and meeting new people. But really kind of, I think, I guess, taking advantage of trying to sort of use the Students' Association and the opportunity to join clubs and societies to meet new people, because like Laura says, you know, it can be easily to kind of get isolated and kind of isolate yourself. So taking the opportunities to try and keep networked and keep connected with people, as well as just really linking in with all of the mental health and wellbeing services. And it might not be necessarily counselling, you know, counselling's not necessarily going to always be the right option for everybody. It could be more well-being, it could be around mindfulness, or it could be meditation, or it could be more you know, whatever it might be, but just linking in with whatever mental well-being stuff there is, and making sure that you maximize on accessing that, just making sure that you talk to people and you're kind of making sure you're aware of what's available.
So next question, I think probably a good one for Lynn. So can anyone give any tips on adapting sessions for someone who's in a wheelchair and wants to give others an opportunity to see things from a disability point of view? This one's from Matt.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, absolutely. We've got a variety of courses. I've just popped a link in around the education courses that we deliver. But in addition to the courses, our regional managers can also help with that. Whilst we don't endorse, you know, the disability experience, we when we deliver our training, we do use simulator goggles and ask people to go in chairs so that they can consider, not feel what it's like to have a disability, but consider how they would include someone with that impairment within the session. So yeah, if you're interested in learning more, please get in touch, either with me, Cheryl, Alison, either one of us can help you. So yeah, please do get in touch.
So the last question we have here is probably best suited for Rebecca. It's anonymous and someone's son's going to study below HNC, HND level. So they're just wondering if they can still get that support.
Yeah, definitely. So with the DSA, that is just for people who are studying at HNC level or above, but that doesn't mean to say that the support's not available for students studying below that level. All it means is it's a slightly different financial system. So how it works is if you're at college and you're studying below HNC level, you don't have to apply for a separate award, a separate fund like you do, like the Disabled Students Allowance. So what will happen is when you disclose or fill in the application form for college and say that you're disabled, and you arrange that appointment, like I was saying earlier about your needs assessment, they arrange and pay for the support internally, so you don't have to apply for the fund. The funding is slightly different, and they might not fund as many different things as universities will fund because of the level of study, but all the funding and support is paid for internally, so absolutely the support will still be there. And just to add to that, check out the Supporting You at College guide that we've produced, which we've linked to on the slides, just to give you a bit more information about how all that works, and just give us a call if there's any more questions.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we've got time for today. So I'll just pass you back to Ailey just to round us off.
Brilliant, and look at that, 5:30. Amazing stuff. Thank you very much, panelists, Brenna and Cameron especially, for their idea for doing this. This literally came from students themselves, from past experiences, which is hopefully very powerful. And obviously we as governing bodies and organisations are just delighted that we can, take this idea and put it into action like we have today. This is being recorded, so we do hope to share this amongst students and pupils who might want to know this information. And like Rebecca said, we have got some really useful hyperlinks in the slides, which we will send out after we're finished today. But thank you all. I was going to quickly just check the last comments to make sure there's nothing we've missed there. And if there's any questions there that any of us can pick up with, can definitely answer them afterwards. And obviously the conversation doesn't end here. We all have email addresses and contacts on our websites and things that you're more than welcome to use. And thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. I'm just going to stop recording.